water in the back. That exit does work also, so if you feel like you need to get up and move around, something comes up, feel free to head out that way. This exit works too. We've got bathrooms down the hall, so feel free to make yourself comfortable for the next hour as you hang out with us in our Booth Spot podcast lounge. Just a couple things to note before we do get started, that this is a live recording, so we do want you to participate, clap, laugh, have a good time, participate, have all that kind of stuff. But just also remember, kind of like at the movie theaters, want to make sure your phones have been silenced, kind of keep a little chit chat with your neighbors to a minimum, so we can all enjoy the goodness that's happening. And also, you may become Spotify famous today for your participation, and you want that to be for a good reason, not for you being the Apple Bing, right? while we're doing this. So we're so excited to have you here today. Our first podcaster is Dr. Kim Barber. I'm trying to spell it out and get all the letters right in my head here. Dr. Kim Barber of Journey to Becoming. We're going to have kind of what we were talking about beforehand, kind of an exploratory conversation into the world of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is a kind of a great trailer, if you would, for her workshop that's going to be happening tomorrow, where you have an opportunity to dive into the topic a little bit more. And kind of get going. She's going to have a great guest speaker with her today, where they're going to be going back and forth with some questions, so it'll be really fun. But do please enjoy yourself. And with that, Dr. Kim,
all right.
I will pass it on to you. I'm going to go open the back door, and we'll get things going.
Thank you. All right. Welcome, everybody, to Facebook. Welcome to Instagram. Welcome to Journey to Becoming, all of the others. We welcome you. You can see we have a great group here today with us. All right, Boost. She's not getting paid to clap. No, I'm just kidding. But we are here today to have a great time. I am Dr. Kim Brown Barber, better known as Dr. Kim. And we have our guest with us today, Dr. Julie Bush. Just here for Dr. Julie Bush. I'm excited that you're excited to be here, because even though this is a topic that some people get uncomfortable with, it's okay, because you got to start somewhere. But the first thing I really want to get really clear is that when we talk about diversity and equity and inclusion, you're really just talking about humanity, being able to how you treat one another, no matter what the identity is. So I just want to be clear of when we say DEI, what we're talking about with DEI, okay? So I always like to say that so we're all on the same page. So the people don't understand that, when they hear diversity, equity, inclusion, a lot of people just think race. But it's not just race, it's about identities of all kinds. Some of identities of accessibility or non-accessibility. Some are identities of gender, sexual orientation. It's just identities of human beings and being able to know how to relate to one another. Is that okay? All right. Clap, 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 clap. I'm working with them, Dr. Julie. There's a lot of podcasts like everybody has heard already. So Dr. Julie, we welcome you, Dr. Julie Bush. She is actually with the CSUB, which is CSU, California State University, Bakersfield, right?
Yes.
And so we welcome you. So welcome, Dr. Julie.
Thank you for having me. I'm bummed that I'm not there with you in person, because that was my hope. But I have a really important special ed meeting this afternoon at 3:00. So I needed to stay here for one more day, and then I'll be driving tonight to Palm Springs to join you. And I'm really, really happy that Dr. Kim started the way she did, because when she asked me to talk, I began to get really, really nervous, because I thought, I'm not the expert on this, and I truly am not the expert. So I may make some fumbles and some errors, because all of us are in a process of growing and learning. And I'm going to talk from the heart and talk about what I do. And I may say things that you go, well, that's not what I really think. And if you tell me, it might not be what I really think either, if I learn more. So it's really just we all must acknowledge that we all do come with some biases, whether we know them or not. We recognize them or not, because we're all very different. We all have very different experiences, and we all have very different families and cultures and lives. And so I hope that I can share some of what we do, what I've learned, and make this time valuable for you. And thank you also, Dr. Kim, for inviting me.
Definitely. All right. So just so everybody knows, we're asking some questions, and afterwards, this is not the place where you'll get the deep dive. Like Elizabeth said earlier, this is the teaser. This is the trailer for the movie tomorrow. The movie is the workshop tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So if you want more, come at 10 o'clock tomorrow. We'll give you more. We'll have breakout sessions and everything there, right? So first of all, why is DEI important in education? That's the first question I want to kind of get to. And just so everybody knows, I'm an administrator in education. Dr. Julie is an administrator, but she's faculty. I'll say she's faculty. And we did this on purpose so that you get two different perspectives from faculty and teachers and from administrators, right? Of what they're looking at, because it's not only coaching leaders, but it's coaching students too. So just in general, Dr. Julie, why would you say that it's important to have about the DEI conversation in education?
So first, I'll give you a tiny bit of background. And I'm a superintendent of a small school district in the middle of almond orchards in Kern County. So I have about 300 TK through 8th grade students. So I'm the superintendent here. But then at the university, I teach in the ed admin program and in the doctoral program. So in the master's program and in the doctoral program in educational leadership. And I'm adjunct faculty there. So, and I do have kind of a wicked cold, and I'm really sorry, and I hope you can bear with me and my voice holds out for that. So I wanted to kind of explain that, but I also want to explain my connection to after school and expanded learning, because I think that might matter to you as well, because this really is a conference about out of school time learning and really doing the best we can. I began my career as an achieving students tutor in an after school program. I only began my career 20 years ago after I had 4 children. And at the time I had a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, a freshman, and a senior. When the final year, I took 100 units to finish my degree and my credential and worked in expanded learning program in the school district that I ultimately went to work for. Then I became a teacher. I taught 1st, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grades. Then I became and I was a liaison with after school program that entire time. Then I became a director of the expanded learning program. Then I became a regional lead providing technical assistance to expanded learning programs. Then I became a principal and then a superintendent. And now as superintendent, I have very much support for my expanded learning program as well as my summer learning. So that's kind of my connection and why it matters to me. I think that people who work in expanded learning have a phenomenal opportunity to spend more time and more valuable time getting to know our students and building the relationships. So why diversity, equity, and inclusion are important in education is because this is a place where we bring people from all different kinds of backgrounds, all different kinds of people together. And it's our job to remove barriers and to help marginalized students and to provide opportunities for every single student to have the opportunity to learn and grow, whether it's in the elementary setting or in the college university. It really is our absolute privilege to be able to do that. And to do that, it's important that we really pay attention to who's in front of us, get to know their names, get to know what their story is, get to know who they are. I begin every one of my doctoral program and my ed admin master's program classes with this exercise where the students have the opportunity to create slides and really share about who they are, because I feel like
that's good.
We are in cohorts of people. When I did my doctoral program, I was in a cohort with 20 other people. And every single time we started a class, they would ask the same question. Tell us who you are, where you work, and why you're in the program. Well, at the time I would say, well, I'm, Julie Bush. I'm director of expanded learning program for Greenville School District. And I'm in the program because I really wanted to model for my 4 children that you don't have to be smarter or have more money than anybody else. You just have to work harder. And that was my lame answer, or I felt like it was a lame answer. And everybody else gave answers just like that. But that doesn't really tell them anything or very much about who I am, what I bring to the table. And I didn't learn very much about who they were and what they actually brought to the table. So I make sure that I do that differently. And it's really important to, I feel like, to learn what your dreams are, who you are, what drives you, what motivates you. And the only way that we can do that is being open and honest and listening.
Mhm.
And so I also do think that there is incredible research out there that shows that that creating a safe space really does improve student outcomes and helps create more cultural awareness and creates a greater depth of conversation so that we can all learn and continue learning. So that's why I think it's important in education.
Exactly. So everybody, hopefully you're hearing her okay. I know we have a little bit of a competition. Thank you. When I get the thumbs up over there, I know we're doing good. Great. So that's one thing about a live podcast, right? And the stream, you just go with whatever, that comes your way and you keep moving. But you're right, because really what we see is we are serving students every day, no matter whether you're serving students in kindergarten or whether you're serving students in the university. And how can you give them your best if you don't even get to know who they are, right? And it's not even fair to them to assume that everybody's the same, because nobody's the same. Even within cultures, no one's the same. You have subcultures even within cultures. A lot of people will say, "Oh, well, don't you do this? Don't you do that?" And it's like, well, I don't do that, but okay, because it's like you can't lump everybody in one box. So we service our students better, like Dr. Julie was saying, when we get to know who they are. It's like you have to care about people. And really, if you're in education, you should almost be halfway there, because there's no way in the world you can stay in education for a long time and not care about people, human beings, right? Even though they're little human beings, they become bigger human beings at the university, right? And so if I don't know you, how can I serve you better? Because you may be going through something that deals with your identity that I don't even know from the outside, right? Some things that are obvious from the outside, like, people of color, that, right? But I'm more than just that. What else is my identity, right? Other identities that we're dealing with. So it becomes real important that when we see the students, what else do we see besides what's right in front of us physically, right? So that's why DEI becomes an important conversation, because identity means so much more than just race. It means identities of all kinds and how we relate. How are you relating to that, right? So I appreciate that. So now we want to talk about, should DEI be shared leadership experience on campus or in school systems? Shared leadership is a big thing I'm going to be talking about tomorrow. I can't get into the depth of it here because we have data and all this other information, because I was asked to serve even with ACE. Everybody familiar with ACE? American? Okay. I was asked to serve with ACE as a part of their circle and doing this particular shared equity leadership, and the data that we were able to gather and some things that we will talk about, which we're going to be talking about in the movie version of this, as I told you already, 10 o'clock tomorrow. But today, what do you think about that, Dr. Julie? Should DEI be a shared leadership, like on campuses and on its school systems? Because they vary. Like, everybody's from different places in here, I'm sure. Like, who are from organizations that are after school organizations? Who are from, okay, we got a lot of people from a lot of people, I don't know, did you see that? You can see them, right? Okay, after school organizations, raise your hands high. You see that? It's a lot of people from after school organizations. How about K through 12? K through 12, got a lot of K through 12. All right, and post-secondary. Okay, that's gonna be you and I in the room. I love it. That's all right. But what I love is, look at that. We have representation from everybody. So what do you talk to us about the shared leadership?
So honestly, I think everything should be shared leadership. So I don't know that this was the question for me, but so shared leadership in its essence really includes involving others in the process. So looking at collective thinking, looking at honoring what other people bring to the table, working to build trust, supporting everybody's growth along the way, looking at multiple perspectives. And in my different settings, shared leadership is different. So for example, in college, I don't include my my students' parents in my leadership role,
right.
Because they're not really connected.
It's not,
but in elementary school,
Sure.
What'd you say?
I say it's not the structure for it. Exactly.
Yeah. So in my elementary school, shared leadership really includes my parents, my staff, my parent liaison, all of my staff, not just my teaching staff, my classified staff, my maintenance, operation, transportation, my office manager, my attendance clerk, my kitchen, everybody. Everybody has the opportunity to come together and create the practices that we use at school to serve our students. And I will tell you that honestly, the easiest thing about this for us or for me, and easy is not the right word because it's been a little bit of living not easy, just going through COVID. But one of the things that we have here is our vision is that we will create an environment that encourages growth on every level for every student every day. I will tell you that is a vision that was created in collaboration with all of those players. And it is not exactly what was occurring when I came here.
Sure.
As we went through a process of breaking down barriers, creating a growth mindset, and changing our vision and mission, we created this new vision and mission with all of our shared stakeholders in a shared leadership process. But in doing that, also, it really helped us to go through the crisis of the pandemic because it was difficult and it is difficult. And there are very differing opinions and politics and religious beliefs and all of those things. And for me, it was phenomenally important to keep reminding them that we all have the same goal, and that is service to our students. And it's the same at the university. At the university, I serve a little bit of a different role as adjunct faculty, but I also get the opportunity to serve on the academic policy and planning committee and the admissions committee in the doctoral program. And that also gives us the opportunity to give buy-in, to provide information, to provide our perspectives. I'm one of the only people in both of those programs that are boots on the ground, currently still in the field doing the work. And my students love that at the university. And my students love that I'm still doing the work and still in the trenches. Yeah, it helps them understand what it actually looks like in the field and not just what it looks like in a textbook. So, and we have a
theory and practice have to come together.
Yes. So definitely think that shared leadership is important. It also helps provide a model for a system that is not hierarchical in nature and that all perspectives are valued. And so it models it for our students, for our teachers, for our students in the admin program, for our doctoral students in the doctoral program. In all of those spaces, it also models collaborative thinking and collaborative work.
Exactly. I agree. How many of you guys have that shared leadership type of structure on your campuses or organizations or in your school systems? 1, 2. Wow. So that's I like to see the room on that. Look, because you look at the data, and the data you're talking about maybe 10%, maybe 10%. Yeah. So you see how small that is, right? And so that's what we have to change. You know, this is a live stream and we want to make sure this gets to everybody, but that's what we have to change. So it doesn't just rely on one person. It doesn't just rest on one person's shoulder, because it shouldn't. You know, something like this, when you talk about the success of your students, should rest on everybody's shoulders, because otherwise it's a heavy lift for one person to do by themselves. So if you're into shared leadership, you're already a step ahead. Do you mind sharing what place you're with?
I'm at a high school in San Diego.
Okay.
McGill High School.
Okay. So San Diego's doing something. Okay, San Diego. All right. And then I think back in the back.
I think for us, it's just ensuring that our community with our parents and families, we're just relying on all the resources that they're going to need. For example, just the COVID, ensuring that everyone has computers and that they are taking all the opportunities. So that has definitely made an impact for us.
Excellent. And what organization is where?
SoCal.
Okay, SoCal. So SoCal, okay, SoCal's doing something too. All right, great, great, great. We like to see that. And see, and for the rest of us, you're with most of us. Okay, my hands up with you on your my hands up with you. Even though I train, I teach, I do all that, speak and do all that, but I'm still on that side trying because it takes a minute to get everybody to that side where they are with shared leadership, right? It takes a minute so that people that the leaders and the board members and the senior management and senior leadership get a chance to see that it takes all of us to be able to get anything, not only DEI, but whatever it is that we're trying to help the student do to be successful. It takes a shared leadership approach. And so that becomes very important. So if you don't have it like that, how do you start that though, Dr. Julie? I mean, what does that look like? What needs to happen? Because as you can see, 90% of the room, we're still looking at trying to see more of the shared leadership. And it sounds like you're doing it, but it wasn't there when you first began. So how does that happen?
So one of the things I wanted to say before I actually answer that question is I love that you're being honest and giving legitimate responses. I'll just tell you, I find when I go to meetings or do talks with educational leaders, many say that things are happening that are not actually happening. They might be a plan, they might be a desire, they might be a wish, but they don't get down to the people who are actually doing the work. And so I think that's really important to recognize, first of all, because you are the people who matter, who are doing the work and who have the contact with our kids. So for me, and I think I'm going to give you an example of one thing that we've done here that's been pretty phenomenal is that and this is at my elementary site setting, we are part of a full service community school grant. And that grant was applied for. It's a federal grant. And in the development of that grant, we have actually a person who is a consultant who really began the work. I met him when I worked in expanded learning as director of a program, and he worked at the county in charge of all the AmeriCorps workers. So we were actually working in expanded learning at the time. Then I went to be a superintendent. He went off and got his PhD at Harvard, and he came back and he's like, I really want to help serve the program. So we started talking. He eventually wrote a grant to get this full service community school grant. This is important because we brought together districts, 3 different at the time, just 3, but we have more now, but 3 different small school districts to work together in collaboration. We provided a shared goals, shared vision for what we wanted to achieve. And then we created a children's cabinet, which was bringing in stakeholders from the community. So bringing in college community health, or bringing in the probation department, the health department, the legislators, the city council, the high school leaders, all of those people to share the work that we're doing. So one of the coolest things that's come out of this, and I think one of the really most concrete models of how this works is I run expanded learning here. I also run summer school program, but in that summer school program, I serve students, not I don't do it.
Right.
People
Your
do
team.
it. Yes, they do it. Serve students from not only my district, but from a neighboring district. We bus their students here. We share staff. We bring their staff over here. Our staff serves. 4 years ago, we started it and we did it at their site because we were in the midst of a rebuild. Then we went through COVID. We did it virtually. Last year it was on our site. This year it's on our site again. This year we have a dream that we have brought in all of the staff that wanted to work, made the job really inviting because we are paying them a lot this summer. And our goal is to train them all and give them a phenomenal experience. So then they will have the opportunity to provide programs on their site, because obviously that's more convenient for their parents and their students. But the reason we can do that is because we have, and these relationships have been in place for years. Honestly, the people involved are the other superintendent I worked with in a previous district. Michael, like I told you, he worked at the county office. The legislators, I built a relationship with all of the legislators while I was advocating for funding to rebuild my campus. All of these things and all of these people are people that you've met along the way that you don't know you're going to work with in the future. So the
Mhm.
importance of that is to continue to build relationships no matter
Mhm.
what. I have a teacher who works for me now who used to work for the Boys and Girls Club, and I convinced him to go to school and be a teacher. And then I hired him, so now he's my teacher.
See?
And next year he's
Yes,
my
I love it.
teacher liaison for my expanded learning program. And so all of those relationships are what help us create visions and missions that we have the shared opportunity to work together, making come to fruition in serving, and really having a clearly articulated and agreed upon mission and vision and goals for where the work is, and a lot of
Mhm.
trust. You have to build trust. You have to believe, and in order to do that, you have to give
Mhm.
up some power, because you can't control everything. You can't micromanage. You can't. You
Yeah,
have to
that's
believe
right.
that everybody else is going to do their part. And if you're working with people who you know and trust, and you know what, we all have the freedom to make mistakes, because we all will,
Exactly.
and that's okay.
Exactly.
And in order to learn and grow, we have to make mistakes. So my motto for them is always, don't let inaction be your goal. Take action. If it's wrong, we'll fix it, but do something.
Mhm.
Don't do nothing. So
Yeah. So don't let inaction be your goal. That's good, Dr. Julie. Don't let inaction be your goal. Do some sort of action. If it's wrong, you can fix it, but at least you're doing some sort of action, right? Which makes sense, because if you're doing a shared leadership, where are you going to start? How many of you are in here in a position where you can start some sort of shared leadership? Where you can, okay, good. All right, so even in the room, even the 90% that doesn't have shared leadership already, I would say almost about 50%, 45 to 50% are in positions where they could do a shared leadership. Because you know what I mean? You have the authority to be able to say, okay, let's meet with so-and-so, let's do this, let's do that, let's get this person together. And notice one of the things that came up is building relationships. That is key in this work, is building relationships. If you don't get anything else out of this podcast today, remember, building relationships is key. Building relationships and building trust. Because as you are building relationships, you start to get to know one another. You start to even, and I tell people, you don't have to be best friends. You know what I mean? But you need to respect one another as you do the work. And if you have the same goal, like Dr. Julie, you said you had lots of people come together from the community and from the schools, from parents, I mean, everything. But and they didn't see eye to eye on everything. But guess what? They did focus on the mission. They had the same goal, the shared goal. And so when you have a shared leadership, then you have a shared goal. It's some goal in mind that you have, and that's why you are sharing it. That's why you're taking time to say, okay, this is what we want to get to, and all of us have this in the room. We all have this one cohesive mission and goal that we want to get to, and everybody can agree on that, right? And that's what you stay focused on. You don't get involved in, well, she wore yellow today, and I don't like yellow. The identity of the person, right? Or whatever their likes or dislikes are. You get focused and you keep focused on the goal. And I think a lot of times that's how you have to bring it to your leadership. If you're not in a position to make it leadership, that you need to make sure that you bring it to the leadership that way. Because if you bring it to the leadership that way, then it's not threatening. And then, but they also have to understand, I think Dr. Julie, you said you have to give up some control. Because if you have a linear shared leadership, then it's not somebody saying, well, I'm the boss and it's going to go like this, right? You don't have that, right? I see Dr. Julie shaking her head.
no, you don't have that.
You don't have that. You have everybody at the table saying, okay, this is what we're looking at. This is the mission, and everybody's views and perspectives of how to get to that goal matters. So there's the respect and just being a human being, right? It's like a respect thing. Any students in here today? I forgot to ask that. Any students? Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Because the next
Students alive.
We're all students, right?
yeah, we're students alike. Because the next question deals with students. That's why I was asking. But you have students, so a lot of times you need to know this view so that you can kind of know what to say to the students. So how can students get involved in DEI, right? Efforts on campus or at schools? Because nowadays, students are involved very much in social justice, very much. I mean, they're the leaders now, okay? I mean, and because they're speaking up for their identity of whoever they are or whatever they believe and on the campuses. And whether we like it or we don't like it, it doesn't matter because it's happening on our campuses, it's happening in our schools. So the question is, how are we going to handle it? How are we going to help it and structure it positively as opposed to like, well, I don't like it and sitting around saying I don't like it. Well, sitting around saying I don't like it, what does that change? Nothing. So it's like the students these days, because of this generation, they're very active. So how do students get involved in DEI work in your classes, or I won't say classes, but in your school systems and in your campuses, if it wants to be productive? How does that look, Dr. Julie?
So I'm going to answer that, but I'm going to give you one tiny example of a different situation in relation to shared leadership that just happened today. So we have late start Tuesdays. So my teachers get the opportunity to meet on Tuesdays. I belong to this, have helped be one of the founding members of creating this Westside Small School Districts Collaborative, where there's about 18 of us superintendents who meet together. Lately it's been virtually, but and it was monthly and now it's quarterly. And we share successes and challenges. And anyway, in some of that, we also have this sports league. And many of the superintendents want to change the sports league to being after school, where it has been during the school day. And so they said, well, let's just get together and we're just going to make a superintendent directive and we're just going to say, no, we're doing it. And I said, well, no, I'm not really comfortable with that. I'm going to talk to my guys who actually do the work and find out how they feel about that, what that would look like for us, what that would change, and what all the logistics are that we need to think about. Now, ultimately, it might change, but it's not going to be because I came and said, no, we're doing this. And it's not going to be a superintendent directive. It's going to be a process of figuring out what works best for our students and for our families and for our staff to address that. So anyway, that's an example that just happened today. I got a lot of input from my guys. So how can students be involved in diversity, equity, and inclusion on the campus or in schools? So we have a student leadership here, which is really amazing for an elementary school. And we really encourage them. We teach them about leadership, but we also encourage every single student to know that just because the student leaders are the elected officials, they're not the only people that matter. Everybody matters, and everybody's voice matters. And our student leaders can help elevate everybody else's voice by sharing what matters to them. And so we work by letting them share their voice. We let them be a part of creating and embracing the things that we do on campus. So they research and find events that they want us to participate in. So it might be running for Ronald, which is running and collecting money for the Ronald McDonald House, or it might be a sock drive for the Jameson Center, which is for homeless children or children that are in temporary emergency care. It might be a food drive for the local pet store, but whatever it is, finding out what matters, what our students are interested in, and then creating projects for them that they can become engaged in, and valuing what each member has to say. So if somebody says, well, I want to make blankets for the elderly in the home in Shafter, if somebody makes a response that's not appropriate, you address that right when it happens. Sure. Like if somebody says, I don't want to do that. We made blankets for those, old people last year. Well, that's completely inappropriate. We need to call it. We need to address it. We need to.
They say it.
Let's think about this differently. But really, it's for the students, modeling appropriate behavior, observing and mentoring them in what it looks like. I am phenomenally blessed in the sense that when I came here, we absolutely did pull out only for all of our special needs students. And about my second year here, I was like, this is not good. This is my students who go into a room with a teacher who hands them a packet, puts a desk against the wall, and tells them to do their job. And I was devastated. And I went into a classroom and I saw one of my students who was, because the teacher specifically called him in, participating in a 6th grade Lego robotics project. And he engaged with his peers And he was phenomenally intellectually impaired, but engaged with his peers, being included in the work and having an opportunity. And that, for me, that one observation changed my entire special ed program model. And it cost me a teacher because she disagreed with me. But I was like, no, this is not the best we can do with our kids, for our kids. And if our goal is to do the very best we can every minute of every day for every single student, then we have to change what we're doing. And what we're doing is wrong. And so our program delivery model now is full inclusion. And the beauty of that,
I love it.
that our students
That's awesome.
love our special needs students. And it's so fun to watch them with them and to protect them, but also to cheer them on when they try things that are new to them. We just had students volunteer. We took a field trip, one day field trip to Camp Keep. And I have a student who's currently in 6th grade who's in a wheelchair, and she wasn't going to get to go. And we had people step up and say, no, let's find a beach wheelchair. We can get parents to help push. We can make this happen so that all of our students get the opportunity to participate in all things. And so that's how I think students can get involved in it.
I love it. I love it. I love that. I love that. Seriously, but look at even just the differences. First of all, student leadership, that's the first thing I heard. I don't know about you guys. That's the first thing I heard, student leadership. How many of you have student leadership boards, councils, committees at your institution, organization? Okay. So it looks like about 55%. You know, I'm in the data, so you know, it's like Dr. Kim keeps talking about this data. So, it's about 55% of the room. Okay, which is good, because if you do not have a student leadership committee, council, whatever you want to call it, that's the first thing you need to go back and do. That's the first thing. You want taking notes on that? That's the first thing you need to go back and do, because you cannot have your students involved or even to have student voice to be heard or be important if you don't have them in a position to teach them. Because one of the things that she said is that they don't only have them there, they teach them about leadership. So they're helping to train them. If you don't like how something's going, train somebody, mentor somebody, help somebody, right? So then that way you're able to go and have the student leadership. They know what's what. And then immediately, I liked what you said, Dr. Julie, is that they are not told that, okay, these leaders are the only ones that matter. Their voices are. No, every single one of you in the room, right? You're telling all the other students they're not the leaders or the president or whatever of the group, that all of your voices matter. And that they are supposed to come back and talk to, the administration and faculty and teachers about what that looks like. And then notice how the inclusiveness even had to come from, even though it was dealing with a student, it was dealing with student not being included in, even in something as the robotics, because of their learning, what I call their learning accessibility. They assess learning differently, right? I don't call it a disability. I call it accessibility. People assess things differently. So they were assessing things differently, but because some teachers are like, no, that's, I'm not dealing with that. No, they can't be in, they need to go and do something else. But if we don't stick up for that, then that becomes something that is anti-inclusive, because that means you're not making it. Oh, and even for the beach talk that you were saying, physically it wasn't feasible. Some things aren't feasible, but guess what? They had somebody to step up and say, no, we're going to get a wheelchair to make it happen. So it may take a little bit more research, a little bit more time, but it can happen, right? So I think it's important to be able to understand and make sure that you have some sort of student structure where they have a voice and that they're bringing things to you. Because if you don't, you're already kind of missing out on that student voice and being able to learn from them. And then I love it, about the desk. When that's something like, here's your packet for the month, for the year, good luck. Now I'm behind the desk, right? And it's like, that doesn't work anymore. I mean, I don't know, but a lot of times we have to come into the 21st century and be able to see that we don't have the same kids that we were teaching back in the 20th century. That's the part of getting to know the identity of a person. Because then once you get to know the identity of the people, you get to understand more of what you have to change. Because a lot of times it's like, I'm not as a teacher or a professor. Now let me ask you this, and I know this was not one of the questions I gave you, but that's one thing about a podcast, we can go anywhere with it. So as a faculty member and a teacher, do you find yourself that you should change your way, or the student needs to change if something that's different and needs to be approached in a different way, learning wise, any of that?
So was the question, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing, but was the question related to, should a teacher change her way or should a student change their way?
Right. That's the question.
Yeah. So I'm gonna back up one thing really quickly, just to say, if you do have a really cool thing, I better write that down. I might forget. If you do have a student group, one of the things that and it's happening right now, which is really super cool, have them be your voice too, because there's nothing more powerful than having the students speak about your program or speak about your school or share what's happening, because they're the pure, honest voice. They're not the ones going to tell the story of what you think the other people want to hear. We just had about 25 visitors from Schools Legal Service in Kern County visit our school last 2 weeks ago. And I had my student leaders go out, and I said, I don't care where you take them. I don't care what you tell them. Answer any question. And I have full faith in them to share, because I feel pretty confident that we've built this phenomenal culture. But the students are going to share that, and the students are going to be honest about it. So if you have board meetings, let your students share at the board meetings. If you have a principal, let the students share. If you work for a community-based organization, have the students share the great work that's happening, because it has a stronger voice when it comes from students, because they won't put the filters on that adults put on.
That's right, they don't.
So right this minute, we have new electives, and we have an agriculture program that one of our teachers just started. What happened is I went to my teacher. I said, I want to do electives. What do you guys want? And that's how I started my after school program too. What do you love? What do you want to teach? Because they're going to do a better job if it's something they love and they
teach what they want.
He said, I love gardening. I want to do it. So he has worked really hard this year. And honestly, he just had people here from Grimway Academy and Grow Academy and different charters, but also huge growers in our area to see what our agriculture program looks like. Well, students met them at the door. Students introduced them. Students took them out to the garden. It wasn't me. It wasn't him. It was our students, because our students are the ones that can tell our story better than us. And then your question about who needs to change, the teacher or the student. The student is the learner. And we all have phenomenally different learning modes. We either learn by doing, or we learn by seeing, or we learn by, it's all different. There are different learning modes. There are also different teaching methodologies. I believe as a teacher, it is our responsibility to provide multiple methods of learning for our students.
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
We may have students that will get it. You have the teacher. Well, I told them I said it, they should have got it. Like, no. That's not the way it is. We really do need, even if you are that person, we have to move beyond that. We have to take it into hands-on experiential learning, which is what we do, what people in teaching
love that.
do so well, and why expanded learning is so important to all of us, because it's a time and a space in the day where we do have the ability to move outside the boundaries and do all that we can. But the response to the question is the teacher needs to change her way and provide multiple modalities in how to learn.
Right.
Because our students, they're children, or even my college students, they all learn in different ways. Some of them are very much like, well, and it's funny because I tell them all the time and they're like, Dr. Julie, you really do that? I said, I print out everything you send me because I need to touch it.
I know what you mean. I'm always like, print it out again. Don't worry about it.
That's so foreign to them. They're like, that's ridiculous. I don't do that. And I said, well, I need to touch it in order. Everybody's
different, right? Yeah. You just have to be able to learn. I love that.
So
really do love that because you're right. Because that's something that I actually taught on that at training of diverse learning styles. Because when you talk about diversity, what did I tell you? Is more than just what you think. There's diversity in diverse learning styles. So that is something else that we have to be able to, equip ourselves with. That everybody doesn't learn by somebody standing up in front of the room and lecturing. Everybody doesn't learn by just here's a packet. Good luck.
Yep.
Let me know if you have any trouble. Everybody doesn't learn by, of the visual. Like if I had a visual up here, right? Everybody doesn't learn by one thing. And that's the thing about it with the different learning styles. You can be more than one, because how many have you taken the test? Have you taken the test for the learning styles before? I've taken the test for the learning styles, and you may be heavy in one, but you have another one that's kind of like supplemental that you actually utilize too, and that's important. So, how many people, if you not don't raise your hand on this, guys. It's a rhetorical question. Raise your hand. How many people actually take the time to learn the learning styles of their students? That's why I say don't raise your hand. Okay. I mean, really, really say, you know what? I want to, okay, or even to let the students know that they have a learning style. Because some students may not even realize it until college. I don't know about you, Dr. Julie, but we have people in college that come and they're like, freshman year, because it's always freshman year. It's like, oh my God, the transition, right? And freshman year, and they're having this hard time, and it's like, oh my God, I struggle. And I talk to the students all the time. They're like, I struggle. I said, well, what happened? What's wrong? What would you do different? Because I always like to ask them when they get to that point so that they can be able to apply to their following year for sophomore year so they can be retained to graduate, right? And they said, well, I realized that it was my learning that I didn't learn a certain way. I came from a project-based school, okay? And everybody know what a project-based school is? Because I want my listeners out there. It's where you don't have, you basically, no, you know what? This is a podcast. I'm going to have fun with it. Somebody tell them what the project-based school is. Anybody? So y'all going to be shy now? Y'all at Boost Conference. Boost Conference, you're supposed to be pepped up. Boost Conference. All right.
So it can be a school or a class, a teacher's classroom, which students work together. It can be problem-based, project-based, but they're creating something. They're doing something, and their learning then happens through the process of having that authentic assessment at the end.
Right.
So they're learning every day and completing together. Usually involves a lot of collaboration.
There it is. And so it's not test taking, right? So when he came to the university, he didn't know his learning style wasn't what because he's a biology major. So it's test. It's here's the information, you regurgitate it on the test. We need to make sure that you know this. And he was used to projects. So he had to actually learn what his learning style was. And he said, because the teacher or the professor wasn't teaching in his learning style, he had a hard time at first until he started realizing what his learning style was and then changing it, taking the information and literally changing it into his learning style. Because the teacher wasn't giving multiple, like Dr. Julie, you were talking about multiple ways to teach it. The teacher wasn't giving multiple ways for you to get it. Like, okay, I'm gonna give you the same information visually. I'm gonna give you the same information here. I'm gonna give you the same information here. Now we're gonna do a project and we're gonna basically have the same concept of the information, right? That wasn't happening. So he had to learn that, wait a minute, I had to learn to learn. That's what he told me. I was like, okay, talk to me about that, right? He said, I had to learn to learn. He said, because from coming from a project-based school, and see, that's again, we assume everybody is monolithic. It comes in this one box and this is how everybody came. No, all of us didn't come from schools that were tests and everything else. Some come from project-based schools. So how are we actually addressing that diverse? That there's diversity there. How are we addressing that diversity? These are just questions, right? Somebody said, okay. All right. Now, how much time do I have left? I'm trying to 10 minutes. Okay, so I made my last question, and then I want to give you guys time to think. I'll give y'all a heads up because it seems like you guys. This is the first podcast for a boost. So they're warming up. They're doing great. They're doing great. Okay. So I'm giving everybody a heads up that I'm giving you a chance to ask a question. One question. Because by the time we get to this last question, let me tap one question. Everybody good? All right. Last question, Dr. Julie. If students feel uncomfortable in a situation with teachers, professors, or administrators, how should they approach it?
So again, I want to back up to what you were just saying, which is really funny. So I have a son who's in college right now, and I have a mentee from CSUB. And it was so funny because my son called me one day, and I won't use the language he used because he's my son at 11. But he doesn't always have appropriate language. He was so angry because he was in the midst of doing a project, and his other colleagues were not working at the same degree he was, at the same speed he was, at the same. And it was so funny because right after that, I met with my mentee, and I basically had to channel my response to Jacob right to Julia, because both of them are very much type A leaders, learners that really wanted to seize the opportunity and take charge of the situation. And I said, you can't do that because, and Jacob and Julia both, well, I did all the work. I made the presentation. And I said, but they don't want you to, because you're taking away their opportunity to contribute. And anyway, so we continue to grow, and there is differences in adult learning as well, not just in student learning. And we have to remember that when we're at the university as well. So the question about if students feel uncomfortable, and I really think, that see something, say something. And I think it's important that you have to say something. And I'm honestly, I've even told my mentee at the university, I said, if you're uncomfortable with something, she recently got an assignment that she was phenomenally uncomfortable with. They asked her, this is what they told her. And I really struggled with this myself because I'm like, man, I work at the university, but I'm also on a governance board with the president of the university. And her stepmom is also involved in university leadership. So, man, I might be setting myself up for this if I make a response to this that isn't appropriate. Her assignment request was, think of a disability, go out into the public for 4 to 5 hours, exhibit the conditions or the symptoms of that disability, and then write about your experience. What on earth? And so she said, I'm really uncomfortable with this. And I talked to the teacher. I don't know what to do. And I said, you have to talk to them. Because that, first of all, that assignment is inappropriate in my mind. Because I just don't, I think that's taking a marginalized population and not honoring who they are. I just feel like that's not an appropriate assignment. But anyway, the point being, you have to say something. We don't know. Maybe the instructor was brand new. Maybe they thought it was a phenomenal assignment to teach somebody empathy, but there are a lot of different ways to teach empathy that wouldn't include that. And sometimes it's unintentional. And like I said, we're all still learning in this process. Right. We never, I never ever intend to do something intentionally to hurt somebody or marginalize any population, but I cannot promise you that I don't sometimes because we are who we are.
We're human beings, right? So, but you learn from it, exactly.
Yeah, and if we don't know about it, we can't fix it.
That's right.
I wrote in my notes, like, be intentional in your actions. Really think about the impact our actions have on others, and participate. If there's something that happens, participate in restorative practices. We've had things happen here where then we've had students and we've called in like our psych or college community health or different service providers. And we've said, we really need to bring this all back together. We're a family here. We're small. We need to do restorative practices. And one of our students was like, no, I'm not participating in that. And our response was, well, then maybe you need to think about not attending our school, because this is who we are. And this is what we believe in. And this is what we're going to do. And so he came around fairly quickly. But working also just on team building, on relationship building, on activities to repair if that's needed, and don't stay silent. And also, if you're bringing a situation, though, because I think some of us do that, and I'm not pinpointing anybody, but honestly, I've taught a lot of different age ranges and a lot of different things. I teach ethics, integrity. I teach HR. I teach systems. I teach a lot of different things. And some people come with a victim mentality. We need to move beyond that as well. Be open to listening and always assume best intentions instead of assuming that somebody was trying to hurt you. So that's how I think students should deal with it.
I think that's a great analogy and a great viewpoint of being able, how you come to the table with, good intentions, thinking that people have good intentions, but to call it out if it doesn't come, if it's not perceived that way. But also before I think it's important to recognize here too, that if people come with a victim mentality, don't dismiss the pain that they've gone through. I think it's very important that if you come in the room and just say, well, you can't come in here with a victim mentality, that means you're dismissing their experience and their pain. So it's very important that you don't dismiss the pain. Say, I recognize, this is this, but now I want to be able to see what conversations we can have to move past that. And then that makes it open, but you haven't dismissed them and you've recognized the pain in their experience and not just said it was nothing because you didn't experience. You're still recognizing that it was important, but that you want to be able to move past it, and you're asking for their help so that you can move past it. So that's my 2 cents. All right, thank you. Look.
And that's all part of honoring who we all are, truly.
Exactly.
And recognizing that we all, every single one of us has a story.
Yes.
And they're all very different.
They're very different. And that's important to make sure that we don't dismiss that when you're working with students or people. Okay, your one question. All right, Darcia.
Yes. So I work in a high school in San Francisco, and I'm not sure if anyone's caught up on what's happening with our school district. My question is, you spoke a lot about shared
Leadership.
Yes, shared leadership. My question is, our school district in San Francisco is falling apart, and unfortunately it's doing a domino effect with high schools and high school students. So my question is, with this shared learning, how or specifically myself, how am I able to encourage my student leaders or my student union leaders to make a bigger impact so it does affect the school district in a positive way? Because unfortunately my students do feel like they're not being heard, they can't be heard. If the school district is falling apart, so are the admin at the school, and
Sounds
they're
like,
they're
the
like
structure's
the-
just breaking down.
So my question is, how am I able to encourage my students, or what can I bring back to them for them to understand, like, look, we understand everything's happening, there's a domino effect, but you as a student leader could do so much to positively impact not just our high school, but the school board itself.
Excellent question. So I'm going to give that to you, Dr. Julie. You have 2 minutes.
30
Yeah, 2
seconds.
minutes.
Good. So I think I got the gist of the question. It's really that the school system is dysfunctional currently. Students don't feel like they're being heard. How do we even help them? So, and honestly, my personal opinion, the entire school system is fairly dysfunctional. It is definitely set up in a way that does not naturally or historically provide for equity, inclusion, and diversity. So we have to make changes. And I truly believe that all of these things we've talked about, even if it's not happening in your institution, it can happen in your classroom, or it can happen in your group. It can happen in your small group setting. It can happen. So you can help those students, I believe. And I know that one of the things that is not my gift is I'm very much a, well, let's jump in and fix it. It doesn't always take into account all of the myriad of issues that you're dealing with. But my initial response is, right now, maybe shared responsibility is not the big deal. Maybe even moving forward in creating this governance team is not the big deal. It's really impressing upon your students how important they are, that you see them, that you hear them, that you're listening, that they matter, and that in the grand scheme, they are what matters to all of us because they are our future. What I tell my staff, and this is how I train my staff, this is how I've trained my staff for 20 years, particularly my expanded learning staff, but I say, my goal for you every day is to pause long enough to listen to a child today because you may be the only person that did. And so
Excellent.
that's, I mean, I don't know that I helped answer that, but I know that
Yes.
you can do.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Let's give a hand. Thank you, Dr. Julie, for being able to be a part of the Boost Live podcast of Journey to Becoming, Journey to DEI, with learning a little bit more by embracing DEI. And if you want to know more, subscribe, and we can be able to get more to you. And we hope to see you soon or in next time when we do our workshop. So this is the trailer to the workshop, which is the movie. So we'll see you soon. I'm Dr. Kim. Take care.
Thank you.